There exists a cruel method to obliterate a person's very being, and the most devastating aspect is that, at times, this manifests within the confines of one's own home. I was branded as worthless, deemed a burden, and informed that I had long since outlived the age for nurturing dreams. All this transpired because I was afflicted by a cerebrovascular event and required assistance. Yet, even prior to that, I was already treated as nothing more than a domestic. At the age of 76, they unearthed the means to subjugate me. They offered me care and, in return, stripped me of everything. Nonetheless, it was with a needle in hand and a courageous spirit that I reclaimed my liberty. If you have ever felt overshadowed, oppressed, or consigned to oblivion, remain with me until the very end, for the disclosure I am about to impart will astound you to the same degree it did me. And should you have persevered to this point, kindly write in the comments. I wish to hear your narrative. My name is Alara, I am 76 years old, and had you encountered me 3 years ago, you might have deemed me a fortunate woman. A recent widow, residing with my daughter, Cora, and my 2 grandchildren in a comfortable home in the north zone of Rio de Janeiro, surrounded by family, with meals on the table and the joyful hum of children. Ostensibly, I was the very embodiment of ideal old age. Yet, only those dwelling within the frame know when they are being erased from the picture. When my husband passed away, after 48 years of marriage, my initial reaction was silence. I shed no tears at the wake, nor did I break down at the mass. It was only in the privacy of my room, at night, when no one else could see me, that my lament would erupt in muffled sobs against my pillow. It was as if my life had lost its resonance. It wasn't merely his departure, the woman I had been by his side had also vanished. Yet, I still had my hands, my craft with threads and textiles, and deep down, I believed this would sustain me. Cora, my eldest daughter, called me 2 weeks later. Mom, Mr. Afonso passed away. You can't stay alone in that big house. Come live with us, it will be wonderful for all of us. Initially, I resisted, but the solitude in a widow's home resonates deeply. I accepted. However, upon arriving, I noticed something subtle. I wasn't invited, I was merely integrated into their routine. Mom, now that you're home, could you prepare lunch? It started on the second day. Then came, could you wake Davi and take him to school? I'm late again and his uniform isn't ironed. And have you checked if the gas has arrived? Oh, and while you're at it, just order the produce. Initially, I happily performed all these tasks. After all, she was my daughter, they were my grandchildren, I wanted to help. But the assistance morphed into an obligation, and the obligation, into invisibility. Make no mistake, it wasn't malice, it was convenience. Gradually, I ceased to be a mother and became a domestic worker in all but name. I, who used to spend my days sewing wedding gowns and trousseaux, began scrubbing floors, cleaning bathrooms, cooking for 4 people, and even washing the dishes while they were already on the couch watching TV series. My identity as a seamstress became a distant memory. Mother, what's the point of this now? You'll strain your eyes with needlework, Cora would utter whenever I suggested undertaking a creative project or discussed the prospect of opening a small repair shop. Cora would simply laugh dismissively. Oh, Mother, who would possibly be interested in that these days? You ought to be resting. Yet, unchosen idleness is nothing short of confinement. I began to realize I was unable to refuse. When I mentioned I was tired, her retort would be, but you're simply at home all day. And then, if I ever sought assistance, it was immediately framed as ingratitude. You live here without paying. And yet, ingratitude seemed the sole response. I will never forget a certain dawn. I awoke at 4:40 a.m. with a searing pain in my back, my head throbbing, and my stomach roiling. Daughter, I said to Fernanda, my voice choked with fatigue, today you'll have to take the boys. Her gaze was a palpable blend of betrayal and outrage. Mother, please, today of all days, when I have a crucial work meeting, just summon a ride-sharing service, endure a little longer. And I did endure. I endured everything, until the day my body, utterly spent, simply refused to carry on. In that very instant, I realized that to my daughter, I had become nothing more than a burden. But that was merely the prelude. I woke up sprawled on the cold kitchen floor, sunlight streaking through the window in slivers and the acrid scent of burnt beans permeating the air. I attempted to hoist myself up, but the left side of my body, at 5:31 a.m., seemed to have relinquished control. My hand tingled, and my leg was leaden. It was as if half of me had surrendered to oblivion, while the other half clamored for help. I recall Fernanda's shriek calling my name, Leo's horror-stricken face in the doorway, and the shrill wail of the ambulance siren drawing near. At the hospital, the doctor's words were unequivocal. "Mrs. Eliza, you've experienced a mild ischemic stroke. Fortunately, there are no severe sequelae, but your body is utterly depleted and clamors for rest. It is paramount that you attend to your own needs, that you place yourself first." That sounded like a cruel irony. Prioritize myself? I scarcely recognized myself in the mirror. The woman I once was had been slowly pulverized by innumerable unacknowledged duties. Now, lying on a hospital gurney, all I felt was a profound sense of dread, fear of being cast aside, fear of never again being able to operate my sewing machine, fear of being perceived as an encumbrance. On the drive back home, the silence was deafening. Fernanda gripped the steering wheel with a force that seemed to vent her rage at the world. "Mom, you must understand that things are going to change from this point forward, right? You need to adhere strictly to the medical guidelines. Absolutely no sewing, no stress." And that's when the most harrowing chapter of my existence was ushered in, confinement cloaked in concern. Fernanda rearranged my bed, relegated the sewing machine to the back room, removed the stove from my reach citing safety concerns, and installed a mobile application to track my movements. The house transformed into a veritable private clinic, and I, the patient, found myself under constant surveillance. Don't climb the stairs, don't do the dishes, don't work with thread, go rest. Yet that repose was not peace, it was imprisonment. What had once been overwork gave way to a stifling mistrust. I spent my days on the living room sofa, remote in hand, gazing at a screen that held no appeal for me. Neither the news, nor the soap operas, nor the talk shows could assuage the gnawing sense of futility that consumed me. And what was most agonizing was the absence of malice. There was merely a profound emotional ignorance. Fernanda genuinely believed she was acting in my best interest, but what she termed care was precisely what caused me to languish in silence. My grandchildren regarded me differently. 10-year-old Leo began to handle me as if I were a fragile porcelain doll. Mariana, already well into her adolescence, scarcely acknowledged my presence. Before, I was the grandmother who baked carrot cakes and meticulously crafted school costumes. Now, I was merely the sick grandma. Inside, I was screaming, yearning to shriek, "I am still myself." But it seemed no one truly heard me anymore. And worst of all, I began to internalize their perception, to believe that perhaps it truly was time to concede that my utility had run its course. One day, while Fernanda was chatting with a friend on the phone, I overheard something that cut me like a razor. "Girl, I'm utterly exhausted. My mother has now become such a burden to me." I was her third child, a defenseless creature incapable of charting my own course, shackled by the dependency they had cultivated around me. Life had devolved into an insupportable burden. I could no longer move, I could not breathe, because her very existence seemed to exact every beat of my heart. That night, I secluded myself in my room, my gaze fixed on my own hands. These same hands that had once meticulously embroidered Larissa's wedding trousseau, those that had lovingly cradled her young children, were now perceived as useless, a hindrance, a cruel reminder of the burden I had become. It was the first time I had ever wished, with every fiber of my being, to simply vanish. Yet destiny, both cunning and capricious, harbors its own designs for those whose purpose remains unspent. And it was there, amidst that chasm of oppressive silence and profound anguish, that a gentle rap upon the door would ultimately redefine the entire trajectory of my life. The sudden knock on the door punctured the tranquility of the mid-afternoon. I was ensconced in the armchair, still in the same pajamas from the previous day, my thoughts a tangled skein, attempting to reconcile ideas that no longer cohered. It was Madame Evangeline, my neighbor from across the street, an octogenarian lady with a vivid gaze and impeccable bearing, as if life had never dared to dislodge her equilibrium. "Elara, my dear, would you believe it, but Lila has torn her prom dress. It's the cobalt blue one, of fine silk, utterly irreplaceable. It occurred to me that you have such a deft hand with delicate fabrics. Could you possibly work a miracle? Just so she doesn't miss the event. It took a few moments for her words to sink in. It felt as though I'd been abruptly pulled from a profound reverie. The word restorer struck me with the force of an electric current. Not for months had I been referred to as such. Standing there, before this woman clutching precious fabric and bearing a hopeful gaze, I felt a resurgence deep within me, a flicker of my true self I had long presumed extinguished. My voice, low and uncertain, uttered, I could give it a try. I took hold of the dress, my fingers grazing the soft silk. I scrutinized the tier, the loose threads whispering secrets to me. My hands, albeit slower and more tremulous, instinctively knew the needle's path. For a fleeting moment, I felt truly alive again. No sooner had the sound of the closing door subsided than Larissa burst into the room, catching me with the dress in my lap. "Mother, what is the meaning of this, for heaven's sake? Have you still not grasped that you cannot overexert yourself? Are you inviting another breakdown? Is that what you desire?" I endeavored to explain that it was merely a favor, that I felt perfectly well, and that I wished to try. Yet, she remained unresponsive. Her reactions were imbued with fear, a smothering overprotectiveness, and that misguided conviction that to control another constitutes a form of love. That night, I moved like a shadow towards the small atelier at the back of the house, where my old fabric restoration machine lay shrouded beneath a dusty sheet. I reverently brushed away the dust, my fingers gliding over the polished wood of its base, and tears welled up as I pressed the pedal. It was like embracing a forgotten confidant, whose gentle thrum seemed to beckon me back to life. I stitched furtively, my ear attuned to any sound from the door, my heart pounding with the rapid beat of a child caught in mischievous play. And when I finished, the dress appeared pristine, as though that stitching had not merely mended the fabric, but had also patched a part of my very soul. The following day, I handed the piece over to Madame Evangeline. She broke into such a wide smile that I almost forgot the crushing weight that had oppressed me over the preceding months. "Elara, my dear, you are still an artist. This is even better than before." That pronouncement reverberated in my very being like a sacred mantra, better than before, better than before. But when Larissa learned of it, her reaction was the very antithesis of jubilation. "This is utterly irresponsible, Mom. What if you fall ill while working? And what if something grave occurs? I'm not going to shoulder the repercussions." Shoulder the repercussions? As if loving someone meant bearing a cross of culpability, as if I were an impetuous child and not a woman with decades of wisdom and expertise. I then realized that my confinement stemmed not from iron bars, but from a misguided and excessive zeal, from a stifling solicitude, and from an affection that, rather than safeguarding, dissipated my very essence. The gravest aspect, however, was not merely being held captive. The most agonizing was having acquiesced to captivity as my permanent dwelling. But I was utterly depleted. From that instant onward, I began to devise plans, still nascent, still tentative, but plans nonetheless. And every profound transformation begins with a deep, personal resolve. I refused to conclude my existence in this fashion. Following that incident with the garment, something shifted within me. It wasn't an abrupt transformation, the kind that's instantly apparent. It was subtle, akin to a hairline fracture in the foundation that commences almost imperceptibly, but which, sooner or later, causes the entire structure to crumble. I continued to feign compliance. "Yes, my son, Thomas, is correct. I will remain in repose. Leave it with me." Outwardly, I projected the same image of a docile, domestic woman, attired for the evening. Internally, Elara the embroiderer was emerging. I began to frequent my creative haven with greater regularity. The mere act of being there, even without so much as powering on the machine, altered my respiration. It was akin to stepping into a personal sanctuary, a tranquil refuge where I could simply exist and feel, unburdened by the need for external validation. I began undertaking small repair projects for my neighbors, a hem here, a fastener there, all executed with utmost discretion. They would arrive when Tomos was out, announced by subtle, discreet taps at the door. "I've brought my husband's trousers," Or this blouse ripped at the sleeve. And there I was, in my worn apron, scissors in hand, reweaving more than mere fibers, reconstructing more than simple textiles. That pivotal event involving the garment marked a watershed moment. The shift, I reiterate, was not explosive but gradual, akin to a crack propagating imperceptibly until the wall collapses. I maintained a facade of obedience. Yes, Tomos, everything's fine. I'm going to rest, don't worry. Outwardly, I presented the fragile, submissive figure in pajamas. Inwardly, the artist Ilara awakened. I was seized by a growing need to be in my studio. The mere act of sitting there, even without turning on the machine, altered the rhythm of my soul. It felt like a gateway to liberation, a place where my existence required no justification. And so, surreptitiously, I began to accept small repair and embroidery jobs for the neighborhood residents. They would come furtively, when my son was absent. A soft knock at the door. I brought Marcos's pants, Maria's blouse tore at the sleeve. And I, with my worn apron and needle in hand, restored not just the fabric, but also a piece of myself. This was the role now thrust upon me, the unyielding elder who necessitated oversight, the relative who caused disquiet by asserting her continued existence. Again that night, tears welled up, but they were not born of grief. It was defiance. Defiance at having allowed herself to be diminished by her surroundings, for having resigned herself to a persona that was not truly her own. It was then that I resolved, if they deemed the art of embroidery a threat, then I would wholeheartedly embrace that risk. And if autonomy proved to be a perilous wager, it was a wager I was prepared to undertake. The following week, I spoke with Marietta. I inquired if she was aware of any available community gathering space. Ever resourceful, she replied, there's the community center's auditorium. It has been out of use since the pandemic. You just need to speak with Pastor Elias. The next day, I made my way there. Pastor Elias welcomed me warmly, though with a degree of perplexity. You wish to set up an embroidery workshop? For whom? For individuals like myself, I replied, who seem to have been forgotten, but who still possess a vast wealth of knowledge to share. He observed me for a few seconds, then a broad smile spread across his face. Donor Ilara, I was precisely seeking something to reanimate this place once more. That was it. Existence clamored for its expression, and for the first time in a very long time, my own life was asserting itself. 4 months on end, I confronted my reflection in the mirror, and each time, a truth resonated within my mind. Aurora, you are still here, and the tapestry of your life awaits the embroidery of your own hands. Returning from my conversation with the community center's caretaker, Mr. Armando, ignited a flame that had long lain dormant within my chest. The diminutive key nestled in my palm, more than a mere object, represented the reclamation of my existence. It was not merely a dusty space, but the portal to a new personal epoch. In the ensuing days, I transformed the parlor into my private sanctuary. I relocated to it my old sewing machine, my case of vibrant threads, a few rusty scissors, and stacks of forgotten fabrics from the depths of the cupboard. With my own hands, I meticulously arranged the small atelier. And when, for the very first time, I settled into the chair before the expansive window that embraced the golden afternoon light, a long-dormant sensation enveloped me. A profound sense of liberation intertwined with a renewed sense of purpose, a feeling I hadn't experienced since the unexpected cessation of my good health. Nevertheless, under our roof, the pretense of fragility persisted. My daughter, Valeria, believed my afternoons were filled with innocuous pastimes in the local square, and for a time, this illusion served as a shield. Any glimmer of enthusiasm in my eyes would trigger her familiar refrain, a mantra that echoed in my mind, "Be careful, mother. You need to spare yourself." But I knew, it wasn't solicitude, it was a vigilance masquerading as affection. And what was most painful was her unwavering conviction that she was acting in my best interest, certain that she possessed the definitive truth regarding my needs. By the second week, I invited a confidant, Mrs. Beatrice, an 8-year-old widow who, at first, hesitated. Her hands trembled as she held the scissors. "I haven't picked up a needle in over 2 decades, Aurora," she confessed, her voice catching. With a reassuring smile, I replied, The gift does not fade with age, Beatrice, it merely slumbers. And today, we shall awaken it together. Within a mere 3 gatherings, our circle expanded to encompass 5 women, each bearing a narrative that mirrored my own: mothers, grandmothers, caregivers, individuals whose voices had been, to varying degrees, muted by the relentless march of time and the weight of their responsibilities. There, amidst the rhythmic hum of stitches and the vibrant tapestry of patchwork, alongside the low murmur of shared confidences, they began to reclaim their voices, their true essence. Yet, like any dawn, mine was destined to contend with the encroaching shadows of night. By the 4th week, a crucial oversight: an unread notification lay dormant on my mobile device. It was a message from the group, a glowing commendation. Donna Marina's blouse turned out to be an absolute triumph. My heartfelt gratitude for your assistance, Aurora. Valeria read. A glacial silence permeated the air, portending the outburst. Mother, what is the meaning of this? Are you surreptitiously giving sewing lessons? Defying medical directives? Do you intend to utterly deplete yourself laboring for these women? Those final words, these women, uttered with such contempt, landed like precise blows, as if my workshop companions were nothing more than social refuse. I met her gaze and, with a steady voice, retorted, "Calm yourself, Valeria. They are women, just like me, who dedicated their lives to serving others, and who now, finally, desire to learn how to nurture themselves anew." She remained momentarily stunned but quickly regained her composure, resorting to her unfailing argument. "What if you fall ill there? Who will tend to you? Who will assume responsibility?" Ah, that familiar emotional blackmail, masquerading as genuine concern. But this time, I did not yield. I merely declared, I would rather live 2 truly fulfilling years, immersing myself in what I love, than to drag on for a decade, existing solely to fulfill the expectations of others. That night, she secluded herself in her room. The oppressive silence in the house was palpable, yet, paradoxically, I slept more soundly than I had in many months. Gradually, the tension within my household escalated. My grandson, Lucas, bore a look of veiled bewilderment. My granddaughter, Julia, maintained a discernible distance, seemingly perplexed by the unfolding events, and Roberto, my son-in-law, overtly expressed his unease through whispered asides to Valeria, "She's filling your head with notions." It was amidst this atmosphere, heavily charged with discord, that I forged the most audacious decision of my life: I would depart. It was no longer a mere contemplation, but an ineluctable urgency, for how can one genuinely contend for freedom whilst still confined within the very ramparts of one's own prison? That which had once subjugated me was akin to attempting to suture with a translucent filament. The atelier flourished, and the number of apprentices expanded weekly. The jubilation emblazoned across their faces mirrored my own, and that nascent, quiet rebellion could no longer be contained within the unassuming walls of a sanctuary. The Helena manifesting herself there no longer conformed to the archetype of the dependent, the ailing, or the quiescent. She had awakened, and now no one would ever be able to stitch her back into silence. It had been a long time since I had affixed my full signature. Helena Costa Duradu. But that was precisely what I inscribed with a steady hand when completing the registration form at the leasing office. Name of responsible party, Helena Costa Duradu. No addenda. No Mariana's mother, no Lucas's grandmother. Just me. That day, I walked out with the keys to my new haven in hand, a modest 2-room apartment, with a window overlooking the street and a kitchen where I alone could decide if my coffee would be sweetened or unsweetened. It was unassuming, devoid of luxuries, yet it was unequivocally mine. The greatest challenge was breaking the news to Mariana. I waited until dinner had concluded. Everyone was in the living room, completely engrossed in the television. I stood up, took a deep breath, and announced, "I need to have a word with you all. I'm moving." Mariana's head snapped around abruptly, as if she'd just been privy to an egregious blasphemy. "What on earth do you mean, Mom? A relocation to where?" "To my home. I've rented an apartment nearby. It's small, peaceful, and boasts a charming view of the square." The silence was instantaneous, followed by the anticipated reaction. "Mom, have you completely lost your mind? After everything, the health scare, the recovery, the hidden studio, are you truly going to live alone now as if nothing ever happened? No, not as if nothing had happened, Mariana. But precisely because everything did happen, and I learned from it. She shook her head, visibly distressed. This is sheer ingratitude. We cared for you, I sacrificed my travels, adapted the house, and you're leaving as though you'd been mistreated. I took a deep breath. You didn't mistreat me, you nullified me. And the most agonizing part is that I allowed it. But now, I want to re-emerge. I want to awaken to my true self. Gabriel's voice emerged from behind. Mariana, leave her be. It's her life. If she wants to live alone, then let her. Lucas looked at me, visibly startled, and it was on his account that I drew closer and whispered, Grandma will be living alone, but she will never cease to love you. However, she now also needs to love herself. That night, I went to sleep with my bags packed. The following day, Paolo, my middle son who resided in a different neighborhood, showed up to help me with the move. Upon seeing me at the door with my bags, he gave me a tight hug and said, Mom, I should have noticed sooner. You were never weak, you were merely being compelled to withdraw. And so, I embarked on my new beginning, for my new universe. On the first day in the apartment, I opened all the windows, permitting the sun to flood the space. I arranged my fabrics, my machine, my threads. The atelier, which had hitherto been clandestine, was now to have a new address and a new name, Threads of Freedom. On the first Saturday, 7 female students were gathered in the new space. We laughed, we cried, we sewed. And while I was demonstrating a blind stitch to Mrs. Alzira, I came to a profound realization. That slender thread between my fingers was mightier than any chain. The following week, Mariana called me. Her voice was low. Mom, I merely wanted to know if you are well. I'm doing great. How about you? It's messy around here. The kids miss you, and I do too. I drew a breath. Then come visit me. But come as a daughter, not as a jailer. She cried. So did I. Not from bitterness, but from a forgiveness that was finally unfolding. Finally, I was able to mend fractured ties, and for the first time, my daughter began to perceive me through a new lens of appreciation as a complete woman, endowed with aspirations, a distinct trajectory, and genuine agency. This morning, I awoke at 9, unburdened by imposed schedules, unhurried by external demands, and free from voices calling out from the kitchen. I prepared my coffee precisely to my liking, robust, with creamy milk and 2 slices of freshly toasted bread. I settled onto the veranda, the warm mug cradled in my hands, and contemplated the world beyond, as one might delve into their own innermost being. The Renassa atelier is now firmly established, already boasting 14 apprentices, ladies, many between their 6th and 8th decades of life, who came to me in the same way I, too, had once found myself, lacking vibrancy, withdrawn, and uncertain of their own intrinsic worth. And there, amidst threads, thimbles, and conversations, they are steadily blossoming, like buds whose growth had been prematurely stunted. The other day, Mrs. Elza confided in me, Dona Sophia, my son wished for me to remain in seclusion, confined to the television and my medications, but here, by your side, I feel truly vibrant. And I replied, it's because your essence was never lost, they merely neglected to remind you. At times, as dusk descends and I find myself in solitude, I still revisit the days when I perceived myself as a burden, an unnecessary weight, a misplaced piece on the chessboard of existence. Yet, today I have come to comprehend that the progression of years does not render us obsolete. What truly diminishes us is being treated as refuse, as something utterly expendable. To age does not imply being disposable, rather, it is a process of refinement, it is time transmuted into sagacity, it is to embody living history. With Mariana, the bond that unites us continues to be woven. She now visits me on Sundays, arriving with her grandchildren, embracing me sincerely, inquiring about the progress of my apprentices, and sitting down to listen to me. Yes, she listens to me now not with the haste of yesteryear, nor with condescension, but with the gaze of someone who has finally understood that her mother is a whole woman, and that feminine existence does not cease with the graying of hair. Pedro assists me with the settings of my mobile device, while Leah sends me amusing videos. And the other day, to my surprise, Mariana handed me a satchel brimming with textiles, accompanied by a simple note: "Perhaps this will still be useful to you. Thank you for revealing to me that freedom knows no age limits." The tears that came were not of sorrow, but of an overwhelming sense of plenitude. Today, when asked about my profession, I respond with unwavering conviction: I am an artisan of women's souls. And should a smile emerge, I elaborate: I embroider self-esteem, mend wounded dignities, and meticulously stitch independence, stitch by stitch. If you've arrived at this juncture, perhaps you're experiencing something akin to it. Perhaps you're feeling neglected, overburdened, or even perceived as an encumbrance within your own dwelling, or in your children's home. If this resonates with your experience, my dear friend, allow me to impart something with the utmost warmth and sincerity. You are not alone, and, even more crucially, you are not adrift. Within you still resides that very woman who once dreamed, danced, decided, created, and built. She is there, merely awaiting to be summoned by her own name. And it matters not whether your year's number 60, 70, or 90. While breath remains, choices abound. While desire persists, a path awaits your footsteps. Do not acquiesce to the blueprint thrust upon you. Instead, author your own. Forge your singular narrative, even if it is decried as stubborn, even if it is proclaimed that your moment has passed. For, oftentimes, the propitious instant is precisely when you elect to reframe the genesis. My name is Alara Montero, and all it took was a thread, a needle, a window to the world, and a measure of audacity to rediscover the very essence of who I've always been. Thank you for listening. And now I pose this question to you: do you still recall your true self, transcending all the labels others have affixed to you? Please share your insights in the comments. I'd be delighted to hear. Wishing you a splendid week, and may divine light illuminate your journey.